"Don't touch her or that cane," Leonard Pike warned. But Marcus Reed was already on one knee beside the blind woman, holding the two broken white sections above the curb as traffic hissed past. 9-year-old Nia hugged his worn canvas toolbox, then pushed a copper sleeve marked MR17 into his palm. Behind the glass doors, Claire Hargrove raised a radio toward her mouth while camera 14 blinked red overhead. "Dad," Nia whispered, "the bus is coming." 3 hours earlier, the fluorescent lights in the basement maintenance office had been humming half a note too high. Marcus noticed sounds like that. Loose fan belts, dry bearings, a relay beginning to fail behind a wall. That morning, however, the wrong sound was the soft scrape of a chair being pulled away from a metal desk as Claire invited him to sit. She wore a cream jacket without a wrinkle and kept both hands folded over a sealed envelope. "This is not personal, Marcus," she said. "Whitmore Urban Systems has a duty to protect its property and its people." Through the narrow window in the office door, Marcus could see Nia sitting on a plastic bench in the corridor, her purple backpack between her sneakers. Her school had closed for a teacher workday. He had been unable to afford the emergency child care fee, so she had spent the morning drawing stars on scraps of reflective tape while he finished his shift. Claire slid the envelope across the desk. Termination for theft and aggressive conduct was printed above his name. Marcus read it twice. The words did not change. "What was stolen?" he asked. "Specialized repair components." "Which components?" Claire's smile remained careful. "The inventory review is still being finalized." Marcus looked at the timestamp beneath the signature. 7:12 a.m. The supply cage did not open until 8. He lifted his eyes, but Claire was already standing, signaling that the meeting was over. Leonard waited outside with one hand resting near the security radio on his belt. He removed Marcus's badge before Nia could finish asking whether they were going home. Marcus did not explain. He only zipped his tools into the canvas bag, checked that Nia had her coat, and carried the toolbox. Upstairs, while the smell of machine oil followed him into the polished marble lobby, employees stepped aside as if dismissal were contagious. Claire walked behind them, speaking softly about procedure, dignity, and a smooth transition. At the revolving doors, Leonard dropped the toolbox hard enough for a pair of pliers to clatter across the floor. Nia bent to pick them up. Marcus stopped her with one hand. "I've got it." Outside, cold air moved between the office towers. A city bus sighed at the curb, pulled away, and revealed an older black woman standing alone near the shelter. Her white cane swept carefully over the pavement until its tip caught inside a broken seam between two concrete slabs. The shaft bent. Then came the sharp crack. Marcus saw her body tilt toward the street. He left the termination letter where it had fallen and reached her before her second step. One arm steadied her shoulders. The other caught the broken cane before it struck the ground. "You're safe," he said. "Stay still for me." Leonard ordered him off the property. Claire appeared behind the glass, one hand already lifting her radio. Marcus examined the brake, turned toward Nia, and held out his palm. She understood without leaving the safe side of the painted curb. She opened the toolbox, found the last copper sleeve, and placed it in his hand. MR17 had been scratched into its surface beside the smaller Mark 03-11. Marcus aligned the broken sections while the woman's fingers rested lightly on his shoulder. Then Claire's voice snapped through Leonard's radio. "Do not let him leave with the MR17 component." Marcus stopped moving. The toolbox had never been searched. The copper sleeve had remained beneath Nia's hand until that second, and yet Claire had named it exactly. Marcus kept the copper sleeve between two fingers, his eyes fixed on Claire through the glass. "How did she know the code?" Evelyn asked. "Ma'am, please step away from him," Leonard said. "This is a controlled safety situation." The wind pushed a paper coffee cup along the curb, scraping it over the concrete, while the red light on camera 14 continued to blink above them. Marcus lowered his gaze to the broken cane. Instead of answering, but the muscles along his jaw tightened once. Claire came through the doors with the measured pace of someone entering a meeting she believed she already controlled. "Mrs. Whitmore," I'm Claire Hargrove, head of human resources, she said gently. I'm very sorry you were frightened. We're going to make sure you're taken care of. He is taking care of me. He is no longer authorized to be here. Neither is the crack that broke my cane. For a moment, Claire's smile thinned. Then she turned slightly toward the people waiting near the bus shelter, lowering her voice just enough to sound discreet while still making sure they heard. Mr. Reed was separated from the company this morning following a serious property matter. We have reason to believe he may be emotionally distressed. A woman holding a paper grocery bag drew her little boy closer. Two office workers stopped whispering and looked openly at Marcus's worn navy jacket, oil-dark cuffs, and scuffed work boots. Leonard unfolded a waist-high security barrier and placed it between Marcus and the glass doors, as if a strip of black fabric could turn a kneeling father into a threat. Nia watched the barrier click into place. Her fingers tightened around the canvas toolbox, but she stayed inside the faded curb line where Marcus had told her to stand. "Dad," she said softly, "do you need the small pliers?" "Not yet. Should I tell them the sleeve is yours?" "No, sweetheart." Marcus turned the cane slowly, checking whether the two white sections aligned. He did not look at Claire when he added, "You don't have to defend me. Just keep the bag closed." The words were calm, but Evelyn heard the cost inside them. A man trying to preserve his daughter's sense of safety while strangers dismantled his name in public. Claire stepped closer, perfume cutting through the smell of bus exhaust and cold metal. "Marcus, put the component down. We can document your cooperation, and that will be reflected appropriately." "Reflected where?" "In the final incident record. The record you started before this happened?" Claire's eyes shifted toward Leonard's tablet. Only for a second. On the glowing screen, Evelyn could hear the faint synthetic voice of a form-reading program. Attempted financial solicitation. Subject approached vulnerable pedestrian. Subject refused initial direction. Marcus had not asked Evelyn for anything. He had barely asked her name. Leonard angled the tablet away when he noticed her listening. "Sir, I need you to stand up now. The cane isn't stable. That is not your responsibility. She is standing beside traffic." Marcus pressed the copper sleeve over the split and twisted it carefully until the jagged edges disappeared beneath the metal. His thumbs were darkened with grease, and a shallow cut near his nail left a thin red line across the brass-colored surface. Evelyn rested her palm against the repaired section, feeling the uneven hand-scratched letters beneath her fingertips. Mr. 17. Below them, another smaller set of marks. She did not ask about those yet. Claire crouched just enough to make her voice sound compassionate. "Mrs. Whitmore, people in moments of anger sometimes behave unpredictably. Let security assist you." Evelyn turned her face toward Claire's voice. "Has he raised his voice?" "No, but has he threatened me?" "Not directly." "Has anyone asked whether I'm hurt?" The bus shelter went quiet. Even Leonard looked down. Claire recovered first. "Our concern is your welfare." "Then stop speaking as though I'm not here." Marcus tapped the cane tip against the pavement once, twice, 3 times. The first 2 strikes sounded clean. The third carried a faint hollow tremor. He loosened the sleeve by a fraction and adjusted the angle. Nia leaned forward but did not cross the line. "That one sounded wrong," she whispered. Marcus nodded. "Good ear." Claire's radio crackled. "We need him removed before the next bus arrives." Leonard reached for the toolbox. Marcus placed one hand over the latch without pulling it away or raising his voice. "My daughter is holding personal tools. Tools connected to an active theft investigation. Then inventory them with a witness." Claire's expression barely changed, but the skin beside her mouth tightened. She told Leonard that the inventory had already been completed that morning. Marcus looked down at the termination letter near his boot, its 7:12 a.m. timestamp visible beneath a smear of road grit. Through the glass doors behind Claire, the digital clock above the security desk read 8:43. The supply cage did not open until 8. Evelyn's phone shifted inside her coat pocket as she tried to silence an accessibility alert. Instead, A small red recording icon appeared on the dark screen. No one noticed. Claire leaned toward Leonard and spoke beneath the traffic noise, still wearing the same professional smile. Cut the part where he came back. Keep only the approach. Evelyn's fingers stopped moving over the copper sleeve. Evelyn's fingers remained still on the copper sleeve, while Claire's whispered order disappeared beneath the rumble of an approaching bus. Marcus did not hear it. He was listening to the cane. He tapped the white tip against the sidewalk again, heard the faint hollow tremor, and looked down at the repaired joint. "It'll hold for a block," he said. "Not for a full trip." Leonard exhaled through his nose. "You've done enough." "Not yet. She has transportation options. She has a broken cane." The bus brakes released a sharp breath of air, and Diesel rolled across the curb in a warm, bitter cloud. Marcus opened the canvas toolbox while Nia crouched safely behind the painted line, holding the lid so the wind would not slam it shut. Inside were a few screwdrivers, a folding ruler, 2 coils of wire, and a small rubber pad clipped to a bicycle repair bracket. A piece of masking tape was wrapped around it in Marcus's handwriting. "Bike repair, 6:30, $45. Nia saw where his eyes landed. Then she looked down at her sneakers. The rubber had begun to separate near one toe, and the purple laces had been tied twice to keep them from dragging. "That's for Mr. Hanley's bike," she said. "I know. He said he'd pay tonight." "I know, baby." Marcus lifted the rubber pad from the bracket. He did not explain that the $45 had already been divided in his head. 20 for groceries, 10 for the electric bill, the rest toward the school shoes Nia had stopped asking about. He simply turned the pad beneath the gray morning light, measured it against the inside of the copper sleeve, and reached for his knife. Claire watched from near the doors with an expression of patient disappointment. "Marcus, dismantling personal equipment on company property is not helping your situation." "It isn't company property. That remains under review." Marcus cut a narrow strip from the rubber. "Then review it." The blade moved with short, controlled strokes. Nia held the toolbox steady with both hands, her face serious in the way children become serious when they sense that money has entered a room even if no one says the word. Evelyn listened to the small sounds. The scrape of metal, the soft snap of rubber, Marcus's breath slowing as his hands found a problem they understood. "Will you lose that job?" she asked. Marcus slid the rubber lining inside the sleeve. "Probably. Because of me? Because I used the part." He fitted the 2 sections of cane together and tightened the copper around them. "You didn't break the sidewalk." Claire gave Leonard a faint look, as though Marcus had just confirmed how impractical he was. "Some people create hardship for themselves," she said quietly. Marcus heard that. He did not answer. He tested the joint with both hands, flexing it once, then again careful not to place full weight on the damaged shaft. He stood and walked 3 slow steps with the cane, sweeping it from side to side. The tip clicked over the pavement, found the edge of the curb, then returned cleanly. He adjusted the sleeve by less than a quarter turn. "Nia, the tape." Nia reached into the front pocket of her backpack and pulled out the strip of reflective material she had been decorating downstairs. Silver stars caught the light. She peeled off one small star and pressed it over the repaired joint. "So somebody can see where it broke," she said. "That's right." Marcus handed the cane back to Evelyn, guiding her fingers to the copper sleeve without moving her hand for her. "There's a raised patch here. If it starts to twist, you'll feel the edge lift. Stop using it if that happens." Evelyn tested the cane herself. 1 tap, 2, 3. This time the third sound came back solid. Her shoulders lowered. Slightly. She reached into her coat and unfolded a $100 bill. "Please take this." Marcus closed her fingers around it. "No, ma'am. You gave up paid work. You still have to get home. And you." Marcus glanced at Nia, at the worn sneakers, at the termination letter lifting at one corner in the wind. "I still have my hands." Evelyn held the money out again. Marcus placed it gently into her coat pocket and stepped back before gratitude could become a negotiation. Leonard's tablet chimed. The report on its screen now claimed Marcus had requested cash from a vulnerable pedestrian. Evelyn's phone, still recording inside her pocket, had captured every word. She tilted her face toward Leonard's voice, then toward Claire's perfume. "Where does Daniel Whitmore live?" Marcus asked, assuming she needed help finding an address. Evelyn wrapped both hands around the repaired cane. "Behind those doors." Marcus looked at the tower, then at her. "You know the CEO?" "He is my son." The traffic seemed to recede for one suspended second. Evelyn ran her thumb once more over the crooked letters MR17, then over the smaller marks beneath them. "And if this belongs to you," she said, "that little piece of copper may be the first honest thing anyone has shown him today." For one long second, Marcus could only hear the steady click of Evelyn's repaired cane against the pavement. "Daniel Whitmore is your son?" he asked. "Yes. And he signed my termination." "Then he needs to see what he signed." Claire moved before Marcus could answer, stepping between them and the tower doors with the calm efficiency of someone redirecting an inconvenient meeting. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm sure Daniel will be relieved you're safe, but Mr. Reed cannot accompany you inside while an active investigation is underway." Evelyn tightened her hand around the amber-colored grip. "He is not accompanying me. I asked him to help me reach the entrance. We can provide trained assistance. You had that opportunity at the curb." The next bus pulled away, leaving a gust of warm exhaust and loose grit swirling around Marcus's boots. Nia slipped her small hand into his, keeping the canvas toolbox pressed against her leg. Marcus looked toward the rear entrance, where a narrow strip of tactile pavement led to a private glass door. "I can walk you there," he said. "After that, I'll leave." Claire smiled as though he had finally become reasonable. "Security will handle it. The sensor is malfunctioning." Her smile paused. "You haven't been near that entrance today." "I don't need to be." Marcus tilted his head toward the building. Beneath the traffic and the low hiss of the revolving doors came 3 electronic beeps from the rear entrance. 2 short, 1 delayed. That alert means the accessibility sensor is reading the door as open when it's still locked. Claire glanced toward Leonard. It was quick, but Evelyn heard the fabric of Claire's jacket move. "The system passed inspection last month," Claire said. Marcus did not argue. He simply led Evelyn along the tactile strip while Nia walked on his other side, safely away from the curb. At the private entrance, Evelyn raised her cane toward the sensor. The device beeped 3 times. The glass door did not move. Marcus crouched near the lower panel without touching it. A thin green inspection sticker had been placed over an older red service label. "When was this repaired?" he asked. "As I said, last month," Claire replied. "What day?" "I would have to check. The sticker says Tuesday." Claire folded her arms. "Then it was Tuesday." Marcus angled the cane's copper sleeve toward the daylight reflecting off the glass. Beneath the crooked MR17 marks, the smaller numbers 03-11 caught a pale line of sun. Nia leaned toward Evelyn and whispered, "That's my birthday. Dad puts it on the parts he buys himself." Daniel Whitmore opened the door from inside before anyone could respond. He wore a charcoal suit with no tie, his phone still in one hand. His expression changed first at the sight of Evelyn, then hardened when he saw Marcus beside her. "Mom! Daniel! What happened?" Daniel stepped forward, but Evelyn lifted one hand, stopping him from taking her arm without asking. "My cane broke." Daniel looked at the copper repair. Then he looked at Marcus. "And he happened to be there?" "He was being removed from your building." Claire entered behind them. "Daniel, Mr. Reed approached your mother immediately after his termination. Security considered the behavior concerning." "I approached her because she was falling," Marcus said. "Your file says you removed specialized components from company inventory. Your file was written before the inventory room opened." The lobby seemed to contract around the sentence. Daniel's eyes moved to Claire. "Is that true?" "The termination document was prepared based on preliminary findings," she said smoothly. "The final audit confirmed our concerns." Marcus bent, picked up the termination letter he had tucked beneath the toolbox strap, and placed it under the clean white light of the lobby fixture. His finger rested beside the printed time. 7:12 a.m. What time did the supply cage open? Daniel asked. 8, Marcus said. Claire answered half a breath later. Approximately 8. Daniel did not accuse her. He only held out his hand for the paper. Claire's phone vibrated, and she turned the screen toward her body before silencing it. Marcus heard the private entrance beep again. 2 short tones, 1 delayed. He looked past Daniel at the green inspection sticker, then at the service number printed beneath it. He knew that number. He had submitted 3 repair requests under it, and each had been marked resolved without anyone ever opening the panel. Daniel turned the repaired cane slowly in his hands. Why is MR17 listed on 38 company invoices? He asked. If this one has your daughter's birthday carved inside it. Daniel's question settled into the lobby like a dropped tool no one wanted to pick up. Why is MR17 listed on 38 company invoices? He repeated. If this one has your daughter's birthday carved inside it. Claire recovered first. Internal coding can overlap, she said. We should not draw conclusions from one improvised repair. Marcus looked at the cane in Daniel's hands, then toward the private entrance as the faulty sensor sounded again. 2 short beeps, 1 delayed. Don't use that door with her yet, he said. Daniel's expression hardened. You're in no position to give instructions. I'm not giving you one. Marcus nodded toward Evelyn. I'm telling her the signal is lying. The air conditioning clicked on above them, stirring the clean scent of floor polish through the lobby. Somewhere near reception, a chair stopped scraping across the marble. Daniel lowered the cane slightly. Explain. Marcus did not mention the 3 unanswered service requests. He did not say he had warned them. He walked to the threshold, crouched beside the lower sensor panel, and listened without touching it. The first 2 tones say the path is clear, he said. The delayed tone is the obstruction relay. They should never sound together. Claire folded her hands. The system passed inspection. Then test it. Daniel looked at the head of building operations, who had just arrived with 2 technicians and 3 white mobility canes from the accessibility storage room. Bring them here, he said. Claire stepped closer. Daniel, perhaps we should handle this privately. Your mother has already had a difficult morning, and Mr. Reed's presence may create the wrong impression. Evelyn turned her face toward Claire. The wrong impression for whom? No one answered. Daniel placed the repaired cane on a black stone table and asked the technicians to label the 3 test canes without telling Marcus which had been flagged. One had a factory joint. One had been deliberately loosened. The third carried a brass-colored sleeve from company inventory marked MR17 in clean machine-stamped lettering. Marcus stood several feet away, hands loose at his sides. You may examine them, Daniel said. I don't need to open them. Claire's smile returned faintly. Then this exercise has limited value. Marcus lifted the first cane and tapped it against the marble. Click, click, click. He set it down. The second produced a dull vibration on the third strike. He rotated the handle, tapped again, then placed it to his left. The third sounded clean at first, but Marcus shifted the angle and tapped near the edge of the entry mat. A hollow note answered from inside the joint. He handed it to the nearest technician. Open that one. The technician unscrewed the sleeve. A thin plastic insert slid onto the table, warped along one side. The room quieted. The ventilation hum seemed suddenly louder. Marcus pointed without touching it. That insert compresses when the cane bears weight on a downward slope. The user may get a clean signal on flat ground and lose it at a curb. Daniel's hand came down slowly onto the folder Claire had given him. Was this item approved? The operations manager swallowed. According to the inventory system, yes. Claire spoke before he could continue. A defective sample does not invalidate an audit. Marcus had access to these components. Marcus opened the canvas toolbox and removed the remaining copper sleeves. Each carried the same uneven hand-scratched MR17 mark, and each bore a different small date. He unlocked his phone, found the Benton hardware receipt, and placed the screen beside them. 12 copper sleeves. Paid in cash. 3 months earlier. Nia leaned closer to the table but stayed beside Evelyn. "That's the store with the red cart," she said. "Dad let me push it." Marcus gave her a small nod, then turned the phone so Daniel could see the timestamp and lot number. "The store keeps security footage for 90 days, he said. "Check it." Daniel glanced at his assistant. "Request the original receipt, the purchase footage, and the full inventory ledger." "No sameris." Claire's voice stayed smooth, but her thumb pressed hard into the side of her index finger. "We should avoid escalating an internal misunderstanding. Then it should be easy to clear up," Daniel said. He picked up Evelyn's repaired cane and compared Marcus's rough hand-cut sleeve with the machine-stamped company part. They were not the same shape, not the same finish, not even the same metal thickness. Evelyn reached for her cane, and Marcus guided the handle toward her palm without placing her fingers around it. "The threshold still isn't safe," he said. "Use the side ramp until they shut the sensor down." Daniel watched that small act more closely than the test. Then he turned to the security supervisor. "Preserve every camera file from this morning. No one exports, trims, or deletes anything." Claire inhaled once. "Camera 14 won't help. It doesn't cover the bus stop." "The operations." Manager looked up. "That angle isn't listed on the public layout." Daniel's eyes moved to Claire. At that exact moment, a technician at the security desk raised his hand. "Sir, camera 14 has a gap." "How long?" Daniel asked. The technician stared at the screen. 17 seconds. 17 seconds? Daniel asked. The security technician nodded without looking away from the monitor. The file jumps forward. It was exported, trimmed, and written back over the original. The lobby seemed to lose its air. Claire's phone vibrated once against her palm, and she silenced it so quickly the glass screen struck her ring. Marcus looked at camera 14's frozen image, then at the silver star on Evelyn's repaired cane. "Don't fill the gap with guesses," he said. "Find something that can place us inside it." Daniel turned toward him. There was no gratitude in his face yet, only attention. "What would do that?" Marcus glanced through the glass toward the bus lane. "Anything that kept its own time." The answer came from Evelyn. She reached into her coat, removed her phone, and held it toward Daniel. "Mine was recording." Claire stepped forward. "Mrs. Whitmore, accidental recordings can be misleading. Background noise, partial conversations." "Then we listen to all of it," Evelyn said. Daniel handed the phone to the technician and ordered a forensic copy before anyone played the file. The process took less than a minute, but the lobby grew so still that Marcus could hear the small printer behind reception feeding out a page. The audio began with traffic, the bus announcement, and Nia asking for the small pliers. Then came Marcus's voice telling Evelyn to stop using the cane if the raised patch lifted. Claire's voice followed, smooth and careful, calling him distressed. Leonard's report on the tablet described the same moment as aggressive solicitation. The recording captured Marcus refusing the $100 bill twice. Then, beneath the sound of a bus pulling away, Claire whispered, "Cut the part where he came back. Keep only the approach." No one spoke when the file ended. The printer stopped halfway through its next page. Daniel stared at the black screen of Evelyn's phone, as if his own reflection had become evidence. Claire's tone changed by only a fraction. "That statement concerned privacy, not misconduct. Leonard may have misunderstood my direction. He exported the file with temporary credentials issued from your office," the technician said. Claire looked at him. "Are you certain?" "The access log is." Marcus could have pressed harder. He could have repeated every warning Claire had dismissed or demanded Daniel clear his name in front of everyone standing there. Instead, he looked toward Evelyn. "Before this becomes about the recording," he said, "that doorway still needs to be closed." He pointed to the faulty sensor. Someone could hear the clear tone and step into locked glass. Daniel watched him for a beat, then ordered the entrance disabled and the side ramp opened. Marcus waited until Evelyn had a safe route before he unzipped the false bottom of his toolbox. From beneath a folded shop rag, he removed 7 narrow service slips, each softened at the creases from months of handling. "These are copies," he said. "The originals went into the system." Claire's forehead had begun to shine beneath the lobby lights. "Personal notes are not official records. They have ticket numbers." Marcus laid them beside the company invoices. 3 referenced the faulty door sensor. 2 named broken curb ramps. 1 described an emergency exit slope too steep for wheelchairs. Every ticket carried the same digital stamp. Resolved. Daniel called building operations and ordered immediate physical checks. Marcus went with them to the emergency exit, not because he trusted the records less than before, but because evidence needed more than anger. The corridor smelled of drywall dust and lemon cleaner. At the ramp, he took a quarter from his pocket, set it flat on the concrete, and released it. The coin rolled backward toward the door, gathering speed until it struck the baseboard. "That slope was billed as corrected 6 weeks ago," Daniel said. Marcus crouched and ran 2 fingers across the untouched seam. "No fresh compound. No anchor marks." The operations manager opened the invoice on his tablet. MR17 appeared again, along with a supplier name Marcus had never seen. Evelyn asked for the company address to be read aloud. When the assistant did, Claire turned away toward the window. Daniel's legal counsel searched the state registry. The supplier was registered to a small house owned by Claire's younger brother. One by one, the remaining sites were checked. A curb ramp still cracked. A tactile strip missing. A door alarm disconnected. Each had been marked complete. Each had been paid. Each used language copied from Marcus's service logs, including the phrase third-tone vibration fault, words he had written by hand months earlier. Daniel opened the approval package. His own electronic signature appeared at the bottom of every contract. He did not hide it. "I signed these." Claire moved closer, lowering her voice. "You approved bundled maintenance expenditures. That is normal executive procedure. We can review this privately and avoid damaging the company before facts are established." Daniel looked through the glass, where his reflection stood over Marcus's bent service slips and Evelyn's repaired cane. "The facts were damaged privately," he said. "That is how we got here." His phone rang. The board chair wanted an explanation before noon. Outside the lobby, employees had begun gathering, drawn by the sealed security desk and the disabled entrance. Daniel looked at Marcus. "Do you want her suspended now?" Marcus looked at Claire, then at Nia, who was tracing the edge of her worn sneaker against the floor. "I want every file preserved," he said, "and every employee disciplined after reporting a repair problem notified before anyone can rewrite why they were removed." Daniel nodded once. Claire's phone vibrated again. This time a company-wide alert appeared across every screen in the lobby, accusing Marcus Reed of manipulating an elderly woman to retaliate against his termination. Daniel read it in silence. Then he turned toward the growing crowd beyond the glass doors. This can't stay in a closed room anymore. By noon, the glass atrium of Whitmore Tower no longer looked like a lobby. Rows of gray chairs faced a temporary hearing table beneath the suspended company logo, and the revolving doors where Marcus had been pushed outside that morning now turned slowly behind a line of employees, union representatives, maintenance contractors, board members, and people who used canes or wheelchairs in buildings the company claimed were fully accessible. Marcus entered through the same doors carrying the worn canvas toolbox in one hand. Nia walked beside him, close enough that the sleeve of her coat brushed his, but she did not cling to him. Evelyn waited near the front with her repaired white cane resting across her knees. Daniel stood behind the hearing table, his face pale beneath the cold atrium lights. He had the authority to end the meeting before it began. He did not use it. Claire arrived in a cream suit with legal counsel at her side and a folder pressed against her chest. She looked composed, almost wounded. "I welcome an independent review," she began when the room settled. "But we must recognize what this is." A terminated employee experienced a painful separation, encountered an elderly woman connected to company leadership, and used an unfortunate accident to challenge a legitimate investigation. A few people shifted in their chairs. Claire's voice was calm enough to make cruelty sound like caution. Mr. Reed had access to restricted components. He had motive to retaliate. And Mrs. Whitmore, while deeply respected, had just endured a frightening event. For one dangerous moment, her explanation seemed to restore order to the room. It offered everyone a simpler story. An angry worker, a confused older woman, an overreaction. Marcus did not interrupt. He placed the toolbox on the table and waited until Daniel nodded. The first item he removed was Evelyn's white cane. The copper sleeve marked MR17 caught the overhead light, and the small silver star Nia had pressed over the joint flashed near the center of the room. "This is where it started," Marcus said. "Not with a contract, not with an accusation, with a broken cane beside moving traffic." He set down the termination letter next. The paper was creased, one corner still darkened by road grit. Daniel read the timestamp aloud, 7:12 a.m. Then the building operations manager confirmed the supply cage had not opened until 8. Claire opened her folder. Preliminary findings can justify temporary action before a physical inventory is complete. That is standard risk management. Her counsel nodded, and a murmur moved through the back row. It was the first retention spike. The explanation was plausible enough that some faces turned back toward Marcus with doubt. He did not defend himself with anger. He unlocked his phone, placed the Benton hardware receipt beside the cane, and lined up the remaining copper sleeves from his toolbox. Each carried Marcus's uneven hand-cut code and a small date. "Check the lot numbers," he said. "Not my word." Daniel's assistant projected the store receipt, purchase timestamp, and a still frame from the hardware store camera. Marcus stood at the register 3 months earlier while Nia pushed a red cart beside him. The room quieted, but Claire did not fold. "That proves he purchased similar parts," she said. "It does not prove company components were not also removed." Marcus looked at Daniel, then at the operations manager. "Open the company sleeve." A technician unscrewed the machine-stamped MR17 joint from the test cane. The warped plastic insert slid onto a black evidence tray. Marcus placed his hand-cut copper sleeve beside it. The two pieces differed in thickness, finish, shape, and material. "Same code," Marcus said. "Different object." Daniel lifted the next item, Marcus's service logs. He read the ticket numbers one by one while the screen showed the matching company invoices marked completed and paid. A former custodial supervisor stood from the third row and said her own termination had followed 2 days after she reported a broken emergency alarm. Marcus pulled out a chair for her when her knees shook, then stepped back so the room could hear her without him standing over her. Claire's face remained still, but her thumb rubbed repeatedly against the folder's edge. "This hearing is drifting into unrelated personnel matters," she said. "Old grievances should not be used to create a pattern where none exists." Daniel projected the timeline. Every maintenance warning from Marcus or another frontline worker was followed by a disciplinary file. Every closed repair ticket was followed by payment to the same supplier. The pattern climbed across the screen in blue and red lines. Claire looked toward the board. "Correlation is not proof of intent." "No," Marcus said. His voice was quiet enough that the room leaned toward him. "That's why we kept the times." Daniel displayed the metadata from camera 14 and the access log showing Leonard's temporary credentials. Claire's counsel rose. "The missing footage may have been removed for privacy reasons. That does not establish misconduct." It was the second moment when the room seemed ready to slip back into uncertainty. Then Daniel placed the pre-written security report on the projector. Attempted financial solicitation appeared in bold, created before Marcus had finished repairing the cane. Evelyn's recording transcript followed beneath it, Marcus refusing the $100 bill twice. Leonard lowered his head. Claire stood very still. Marcus looked across the table at her, not with triumph, but with exhaustion. "I'm not here to bury anyone," he said. "I'm here because the truth was already buried once." Claire turned toward Evelyn. "Mrs. Whitmore cannot verify what she did not see." Evelyn rose slowly, one hand on the amber grip of her cane. Nia stepped no farther than Marcus's side, but she pointed to the silver star and said, "That was on there before the bus left." Daniel looked toward the dark screen behind him. "Bring up the restored file," he ordered. The atrium lights dimmed, and 17 missing seconds appeared on the monitor, paused one frame before they began. The restored footage began with the silver star flashing in the glass of the departing bus. Marcus had already repaired Evelyn's cane. He had already stepped away. Then the video showed her cane tip catching near the broken curb as a delivery van drifted too close to the stop. Marcus turned, crossed the pavement in 3 fast steps, and pulled her back by the shoulder just before the van's mirror passed through the space where her head had been. Leonard entered the frame a second later, blocking camera 14 with his body and pointing Marcus toward the street. No. One in the atrium moved. The projector fan hummed above the rows of chairs. A phone vibrated somewhere near the board members, but no one reached for it. On screen, Marcus released Evelyn as soon as she regained her balance. He checked the repaired joint, refused the bill she held toward him, then bent to pick up the termination paper that had blown beneath the bus bench. Daniel let the 17 seconds play twice. The second time, Evelyn's recording ran beneath the image. "Please take this." "No, ma'am. You gave up paid work. You still have to get home." The security report remained projected beside the video. Attempted financial solicitation. Aggressive approach. Refusal to comply. Each phrase now looked smaller than the image contradicting it. Claire's pen slipped from her fingers and struck the table once. She did not bend to retrieve it. "The clip has been reconstructed," her attorney said, though his voice had lost its earlier certainty. "Reconstruction can introduce interpretive questions." The technician turned toward the board. The frames came from the server cache. The bus reflection established sequence. The phone recording, transit timestamp, and camera metadata established duration. Nothing was generated. Daniel looked at Leonard. "Who ordered you to remove those seconds?" Leonard's hands remained clasped behind his back, but the knuckles had gone pale. Claire spoke before he could answer. "Security personnel make judgment calls every day." He may have believed the footage exposed Mrs. Whitmore during a vulnerable moment. Evelyn rose from her chair. She did not take Daniel's offered arm. Her cane struck the marble once. Then again, the repaired copper sleeve glinting beneath the projection light. A power cable crossed the aisle ahead of her. Marcus stepped forward, moved it aside, and returned to his place without touching her. Evelyn reached the hearing table alone. She placed the white cane between the security report and Claire's folder. The silver star faced the room. "You keep using the word vulnerable," she said. "What made me vulnerable was not blindness. It was a broken walkway, a false safety signal, and people who decided my voice mattered less than their report." Claire's mouth opened, but Evelyn continued. "Marcus Reed did not know who I was. He did not know my son was the CEO. He had just lost his job. His daughter needed shoes. He gave up the part he needed for paid work, refused my money, and came back when he heard danger." She turned toward the screen she could not see. "The man your company called a threat protected me twice. The people paid to protect this building erased the second time." The atrium went so quiet that the slight rasp of reflective tape against the tabletop became audible. Nia reached for Marcus's hand. He looked down as her fingers closed around 2 of his. She breathed out slowly, as if she had been holding that breath since the security barrier went up. Daniel removed the CEO badge from his lapel and placed it beside Evelyn's cane. "My electronic signature appears on the contracts tied to these false repairs," he said. "I approved summaries instead of examining the work. That failure belongs in the record with everything else." Claire's composure finally fractured at the edges. "Daniel, you cannot make governance decisions in a room driven by emotion. This room is driven by evidence." He ordered Claire suspended pending an independent financial and criminal review. Leonard's security authority was revoked, and he was directed to cooperate with investigators. Every termination file containing the same language used against Marcus would be reopened. The company would issue a public correction stating that Marcus had neither stolen property nor threatened Evelyn. All surveillance files, contracts, service logs, access records, and personnel communications were placed under legal hold. Leonard looked at Claire, then at the recording transcript. "She promised me the supervisor position," he said hoarsely. "She told me to write that he asked for money." Claire stared at him as if silence might still be purchased. "Could not." Daniel faced Marcus. "Your record will be cleared today." Marcus looked at the cane, then at the people whose own files had been reopened because his had refused to stay buried. He did not smile. "Clear there's two," he said, "and fix the doors before somebody else trusts the wrong sound." A few people lowered their eyes. No one applauded until Evelyn lifted her cane from the table. Even then, the sound began slowly, less like celebration than acknowledgement. Daniel waited until it faded. "Come back," he said to Marcus. "Effective immediately. Better title. Better pay. Whatever it takes." Marcus glanced at Nia's worn sneakers, then through the glass at the curb where the morning had begun. "Not in the same system," he said, and for the first time since the truth entered the room, Daniel had no answer ready. The applause faded before the last row had emptied. Chairs scraped softly across the marble, legal staff gathered sealed folders, and two investigators escorted Claire Hargrove through a side corridor without handcuffs, spectacle, or one final argument. Leonard remained behind with counsel, surrendering his security badge and access card one item at a time. On the atrium screen, Marcus Reed's personnel file changed from terminated for theft and aggressive conduct to cleared pending full restoration, but Marcus did not watch the words appear. He was helping Evelyn fit the repaired cane beneath her arm while Daniel stood a few feet away, holding the offer Marcus had refused. "What would make the system different?" Daniel asked. Marcus looked through the glass at the cracked curb, then toward the disabled accessibility door. "Not a new title for me." His voice was tired, but steady. "Reopen every file built from the same language. Give workers somewhere to report problems that doesn't pass through the people they're reporting. Let disabled people test the systems before executives call them safe. And no repair gets paid until somebody stands in front of it and proves it works." Daniel lowered the offer. "Those are conditions. They should have been policy." Evelyn's mouth softened at the corner. She did not praise Marcus or call him extraordinary. She simply said, "Listen to him." Over the following weeks, the investigation moved through ordinary channels that made the justice feel more real than any dramatic arrest. Claire's contracts were frozen and referred to financial investigators. Leonard cooperated in exchange for consideration, but his false report remained part of the public record. Daniel temporarily surrendered personnel approval authority while an independent committee reviewed his oversight. 12 former employees received notices that their disciplinary files had been reopened, and 3 were formally cleared before the month ended. Marcus returned only after the board approved the Open Door Access Initiative with 4 permanent safeguards: independent reporting, field verification, disabled user testing, and legal support for workers facing retaliation. His new office was small, with no private elevator and no name engraved on the glass. He preferred it that way. The old canvas toolbox sat beneath his desk, its corners worn pale, no longer something strangers looked at and saw as evidence of failure. It held the same pliers, the same folding ruler, and one remaining copper sleeve marked by hand. On his first morning, Marcus led a team to inspect the Whitmore Tower entrance. A maintenance worker noticed that the audible signal was too soft during rush hour traffic. Marcus wrote her name at the top of the report. "You found it," he said when she tried to give him credit. Nia visited after school that afternoon wearing new sneakers, but the shoes were the smallest part of what had changed. She no longer lowered her voice when asking whether Marcus would still have a job tomorrow. The adults had finally made the uncertainty their responsibility instead of hers. Marcus sat beside her on a bench near the repaired curb and told her the truth he had hidden that morning. "I was scared you'd look at me and see somebody who failed." Nia studied the canvas toolbox between his boots. "I saw you fix the cane. That wasn't the same as fixing everything." No, she slipped her hand into his. But you still stopped. Marcus looked away for a moment, breathing through the ache that sentence opened. Then he squeezed her fingers once. Daniel's second chance came more slowly. He apologized publicly to Marcus, but Evelyn required more than words. For 1 year, Daniel attended unannounced inspections without an assistant, listened to frontline workers, without receiving summaries first, and allowed their complaints to enter the board record in their own language. Evelyn did not immediately forgive him with an embrace. She let him prove that listening could become a habit. Months later, the repaired entrance reopened on a quiet morning. The tactile strip ran unbroken from the bus stop to the door. The curb had been leveled. The sensor gave one clear tone, and the glass opened without delay. Evelyn approached with the same white cane. The copper MR17 sleeve remained around the old fracture, and Nia's silver star still clung to its edge, scratched now but visible. Marcus stood back while Evelyn tested the path herself.
Top.
Step.
Top.
Step. The door answered with a clean chime. No one spoke. Daniel watched his mother cross the threshold without reaching for her arm. Nia leaned against Marcus's side. Even the technicians remained still, understanding that the silence no longer belonged to shame or shock. It belonged to something finally working the way it had always claimed to work. Evelyn turned her face toward Marcus. It doesn't lie anymore. Marcus rested one hand on the handle of his toolbox and looked at the open door. Then it's ready. He took Nia's hand, and together they walked past the place where he had once been pushed out, while the old cane clicked behind them. Proof that dignity never needed to shout, and kindness was never lost. Sometimes it simply waited inside a broken thing until truth gave it somewhere to stand.